The audacity it takes to stand apart, to sever the bonds that keep you tethered to their approval. They want you to fall in line, to be just like them, desperate for a nod, a smile, a fleeting bit of validation. They cling to the idea of being liked as if it were the air they breathe, terrified of the mere thought of being shunned. But to rise above all that, to have the courage to be disliked, that's a different kind of power altogether. It's the act of defying the unspoken rules, of saying no to the charade of fitting in. When you embrace that disdain, you strip away their power over you, leaving them scrambling to understand how you've escaped their game. They'll call it arrogance. They'll label you a villain, a threat to their precious equilibrium. They want you to need them, to crave their approval, like some addict craving a fix. But when you step into the shadows, when you let their opinions fall away like dead leaves, it shakes them to their core. They don't understand how someone can walk away from the crowd without looking back. It's because they've never tasted that kind of freedom. They've never understood that to be truly free is to be unbound by the need to be liked. It's a liberation they fear, a path they would never dare walk. Imagine their confusion, their shock, when they realize their words, their judgments, hold no sway over you, that you're not moved by their whispers or rattled by their disdain. You exist outside of their narrative, a wild card they can't predict. They want to mold you, to make you conform to their standards, their expectations. But you've severed that thread. You've chosen to walk in the shadows, where their light of approval doesn't reach. And in doing so, you've claimed a power they'll never know. The courage to be disliked is the courage to live for something greater than their fleeting applause. They'll resent you for it. They'll twist your actions, your words, painting you as the villain in their story. But what they fail to grasp is that their dislike is a badge of honor, a sign that you've transcended their petty games. To be disliked is to be free from their grip, to refuse to dance to their tune. And in that refusal, you become something they both fear and envy. You've become untouchable. They live their lives shackled by the need to be seen a certain way, to be accepted. But you've cut those chains. You've chosen to stand alone, and in that solitude, you've found strength. To have the courage to be disliked is to embrace your own path without hesitation, without the need to explain or justify. It's the ultimate act of defiance against a world that thrives on conformity. They'll try to bring you back, to reel you into their circle with guilt, with manipulation. But that's where they falter. They don't realize that the moment you decided to be disliked was the moment you became truly free. They are prisoners to the court of public opinion, while you walk as a sovereign of your own existence. They thrive on the game of faces, of masks worn to appease. But when you strip off the mask, when you let them see you as you are, raw and unfiltered, it terrifies them, because it shows them what they could be if they had the guts to step into the darkness, to face the disdain, to live without the crutch of being liked. They'll never do it. They'll spend their lives wrapped in the safety of their personas, while you become something more, something real, something that doesn't need their acceptance to validate its existence. People-pleasing, the sweetest poison of them all. It lures with the promise of acceptance, a false sense of peace in the crowd's approval. But beneath that sugary veneer lies rot. Each time you bend, each time you contort yourself to fit their expectations, you carve away a piece of your own essence. It's a hollowing process, gradual and insidious. You become a mirror reflecting everyone's desires except your own. And in that reflection, you lose sight of who you are, what you stand for. This is how the poison works. It numbs you to your own voice, replaces it with the clamor of everyone else's demands. And soon, you're nothing but a puppet, strings pulled by the hands of those you so desperately tried to please. They want you malleable, docile, eager to please. It feeds their egos, makes them feel important, powerful even. They sense it, the neediness in your compliance, and they exploit it without a second thought. But every act of pleasing, every instance of self-betrayal, leaves a scar on your self-esteem. You give a part of yourself away each time you say yes when you should have said no. Each time you laugh at a joke that cuts too deep. Each time you nod in agreement to avoid conflict. It's a slow erosion, an unrelenting tide that wears you down until there's nothing left but the shell of who you were supposed to be. And the twisted part? It never ends. People-pleasing is a ravenous beast, insatiable in its hunger for more. The more you give, the more they take, and the cycle feeds on itself. One act of submission leads to another, and another, until your entire existence revolves around keeping everyone else content. They become the center of your world, and you become an afterthought in your own life. It's the path to self-erasure, to becoming a ghost that haunts the background of your own story. Every attempt to please is just another nail in the coffin of your self-worth. People-pleasing breeds resentment, but it's a resentment directed inward. You begin to hate yourself for your own spinelessness, for your inability to stand up and say, enough. But the longer you indulge in this poison, the more it binds you, chains you to a life of servitude disguised as harmony. You wear the mask of the agreeable, the accommodating, while inside, storm brews, a storm of everything you've swallowed down, every boundary you've allowed them to cross. Yet, to break free requires a courage most aren't willing to muster. They would rather live in the comfort of being liked than face the terror of being true to themselves. To escape this cycle, to purge this poison, means embracing something darker, something harder to swallow. It means understanding that people-pleasing is not kindness, it's cowardice. It's a desperate attempt to avoid the discomfort of being disliked, of facing the world on your own terms. People-pleasing is the opposite of strength. It's the pathway to eternal subservience, to living a life dictated by the whims and expectations of others. It promises peace, but delivers chains, shackles that bind you to a reality that you never chose for yourself. Breaking free means stepping into the shadows, into the space where you no longer need to be adored by everyone. It means letting them be uncomfortable, letting them feel the sting of your refusal, your defiance. It's about reclaiming the pieces of yourself that you've given away, one no at a time, one boundary drawn in the sand. It's not an act of cruelty, but of survival. Because if you continue down the path of people-pleasing, you will lose yourself entirely. You'll become a stranger to your own desires, your own needs, your own soul. Never forget what you are. The world will make it its mission to remind you at every turn, to hammer into your skull what they see as your weaknesses, your flaws, your differences. They'll label you, box you, define you by what they think you lack. They will stare, they will whisper, they will look away when you catch their eyes. They thrive on your self-doubt, on the moments when you flinch, when you let their perceptions seep into your bones. They want you to feel like an outsider, like an anomaly that should apologize for existing. But there lies the secret. What they see as your curse is where your power resides. Wear it like armor. Your scars, your disabilities, your so-called limitations, they are the things that set you apart in a world full of sameness. They are not chains, not weights dragging you into the depths. No, they are your symbols of defiance, of survival. They are proof that you endure in a world that would rather pretend you don't exist. The world expects you to hide, to mask your differences in shame. It feeds off your discomfort, your desire to fit into a mold that was never meant for you. But when you wear your identity as armor, when you embrace what you are, you turn their weapons to dust, their words, their pity, their exclusion. It all falls flat when you no longer cower under their gaze. People with disabilities know this pain all too well. The feeling of being on the periphery, as if the world was built for others and not for them. They are made to feel like afterthoughts, like they must apologize for taking up space. But that narrative is a lie, one crafted by those who fear what they cannot understand. What they call a disability is often a source of unimaginable strength. To move through a world that was not made for you, to navigate the daily labyrinth of indifference and ignorance that requires a kind of power most people will never comprehend. It forges a resilience, a dark and unbreakable will, born from the necessity of survival. They will use your differences against you, throw them in your face as if they were faults. They want to make you feel small, insignificant, lesser. But the moment you accept what you are, the moment you wear it openly, shamelessly, they lose their power over you. Their words become meaningless, their attempts to diminish you rendered impotent. You become untouchable. You flip their expectations on their heads. You turn what they see as your weakness into a weapon. They cannot hurt you with what you have already accepted, what you have already made peace with. There is something deeply unsettling to them about someone who refuses to play by their rules, who refuses to be defined by their standards. They are unnerved by the sight of someone who should be broken, yet stands tall. It shatters their illusion of normalcy, forces them to confront the narrowness of their own existence. People with disabilities, when they wear their identity as armor, when they embrace what makes them different, become a force that cannot be easily dismissed or ignored. They become reminders of the world's fragility, of how easily the facade of normality can crack. Never forget what you are, because it is your shield, your strength. When you make peace with your reflection, when you look into the darkness within and find not weakness, but the source of your power, you rise above their games. They will never understand what it's like to live every day in defiance of a world that wasn't built for you. They will never grasp the quiet rage, the seething strength that comes from being overlooked, underestimated. And that is your advantage. They play a game where they think they hold all the cards, but you've seen the world from a vantage point they will never reach. You've navigated its labyrinth with scars to show for it, and those scars are your testament. When the purpose within you burns brighter than the need for their approval, their opinions become nothing but static in the background. A dull, incessant noise that fades into irrelevance. Purpose is the antidote to their judgments, the force that drowns out their whispers and their scorn. With a purpose so strong, so consuming, the world and its petty opinions crumble into dust. You walk through the flames they throw at you, not because they don't burn, but because what lies beyond is worth every scar, every wound. To be driven by something greater than their acceptance is to rise above the need to be understood, to be liked. They sense it too. They sense when you've crossed that threshold, when their words no longer tether you. It unsettles them. This idea that someone could be so consumed by their own mission that they no longer seek the validation of the masses. It makes you dangerous in their eyes. A person who does not bend to the collective will, who does not crave the pat on the back, is someone they cannot control. They want you to care, to react, to mold yourself into the shape they deem acceptable. But when your purpose is the only thing that fills your mind, you become something they can't touch, something that moves beyond their realm of influence. Purpose is the courage to be disliked incarnate. It's not about pushing people away for the sake of it. It's about walking a path so fiercely that anyone who doesn't belong on it falls to the wayside. You don't have time to worry about their opinions when you're building, creating, transforming into something they cannot fathom. Their judgments, their snide remarks, they bounce off you like raindrops on stone. Because when your mind is consumed with the pursuit of something greater, you become immune to the trivialities that consume them. They hate that. They hate the idea that they no longer have a say in who you are, in what you do. They'll call you cold, call you arrogant, call you a villain in their narrative. Let them. It only proves how little they understand the power of a mind that has found its purpose. They will never know the focus, the drive, the sheer force of will that it takes to be so engrossed in your own journey that their presence, their opinions, simply cease to matter. In their eyes, you are the one who has strayed, who has rejected the herd mentality. But in reality, they are the ones who wander aimlessly, clinging to each other's perceptions, because they lack one of their own. To stop caring what others think is not an act of rebellion. It's an act of survival. It's the necessary armor you don when you have something so important, so vital to achieve, that all else becomes background noise. Purpose consumes you, and in that consumption, you find liberation. It gives you the audacity to stand alone, to be disliked, even hated, if that's what it takes. Because in the end, it's not about them. It never was. It's about the path you've chosen, the path that demands every ounce of your being, leaving no room for their shallow expectations. So let them talk. Let them chatter in the background like the irrelevant noise they are. You have a purpose that calls to you, that consumes you, that demands you shed every fear of what they might think. In that purpose, you find the courage to be disliked, to be the outlier, the one who walks a path not meant for the faint-hearted. They will never understand the freedom that comes when the only opinion that matters is your own. They will never know the strength it takes to embrace the darkness of solitude, guided only by the light of your own purpose. And in that, they are the ones who are truly lost.